Dear young adults, Om Sai Ram and welcome to the June workshop for the Satya Sai Young Adults Talent Development Program 2018. Before we kickstart today's workshop, let us pray to our beloved Bhagavan for his blessings to ensure that this session runs smoothly. Om. Dear Bhagavan, we pray to you to seek your guidance and to deepen our understanding and to broaden our thinking. Swami, with your divine blessings, may the skills that we develop from this workshop be used to aid us all in our daily lives. Today's session will be facilitated by the two leads of the Young Adult Media team. Bala has been a husband since the start of the year and a dog parent since 2013. You'll see evidence of both throughout this presentation. He currently works as a digital media strategist for a startup company and teaches grade 4 SSE in addition to being the devotional coordinator for a center in Torrance, California. Ashina is from Hong Kong and has previously worked in public relations where she managed a number of high-profile clients across Asia and internationally. She is currently studying a master's degree in communications and media in Melbourne, Australia, where she assists with SSE and helps to facilitate young adults workshops. Bala and Ashina have both been involved in the media team since the end of 2015 in the lead-up to the 2016 World Youth Festival. They carried on leading the team to support the young adult subcommittees and global initiatives. Media team, the floor is now yours.
Everyone, my name is Paula.
I'm Ashina.
Donovan, I think your mic might be still on. Thank you. We're going to begin our presentation with a quick poll. Some of you have already begun answering the poll question. Please, if you are able to respond to the poll through a device, laptop, phone, tablet, please do so. But if you're driving, please be cautious, please be safe. Have someone else respond. If no one is able to, then it's fine if you don't respond to the poll. First priority is making sure that everyone is safe. As we've mentioned before, as has been mentioned before, we are an international media team, and we comprise of young adults from 6 continents. We're working on getting that 7th continent in Antarctica, but we'll probably have to recruit some penguins. If you see a role in this slide that you think you or someone you know might be suited for, please email us some samples of the work to the address on the screen, yamedia@satyasai.org.
And if you want to get involved, contact your local or national YA coordinator. So as Bala said, we have several teams under the umbrella of the YA Media team. We have a writing team, a graphic design team, and video editing teams that work to create content for the various subcommittees and other young adult initiatives. We also work with Spanish, Russian, and Bahasa Indonesian translators. So if you feel like you need anything translated for your country, do reach out to us and we can work together to create something for you.
We also do event media coordination in Perthi whenever the event is led by the young adults. So for example, the Youth Festival, that would now be called the Young Adult Festival. The SSIO residential course events that happen in Perthi, and this year we'll be assisting the SSIO with the Go Green conference. We also manage the event photography and videography during these events, or help the SSIO with our team members.
So today's webinar is going to focus on engaging people meaningfully through different forms of media. In essence, through visual communication. We're going to explore effective messaging through photo and video, and posters and graphics that can be used at work, SAI events, or for personal use. So as we all know, There are different social media platforms. Social media is a great way for people to reach a wide group of audiences. For example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp allows us to very quickly spread information and communicate on a personal level with contacts that we know.
And for those of you who know of Instagram, it is a great application. It's very visually driven. So it's those engagement through visual images that drive their content.
Facebook is something that has been easily adapted by the previous generation, so our parents, and has now been used less frequently by teens. However, it is still a great method to share with family and friends. Twitter is good for people who want quick and effective ways of obtaining information based off its dense word count.
Sorry, I'm also going to be pulling up another poll question here. Please do answer it when you're able to. What's the first place that you probably look for videos? You might think Vimeo, but that's probably a close second. The most popular is probably going to be YouTube, and it's the place you're going to go when you're jonesing for a vlog or some comic relief without paying for some sort of subscription service like Netflix, Hulu, HBO. And unless you've been living under a rock, Instagram and Snapchat have been having their little feud, and it's been greatly benefiting the consumers, that's us. So that's a quick summary of some of the sorry, changing the poll question, and poll is now open. There's a quick summary of some of the social media platforms that we are going to talk about, or are currently in our scope. Go ahead and respond to the poll that's up right now. We want to know what sort of, where you seek your content, which platform do you favor the most? As you'll respond to those questions, we're going to move on and talk to you about some of the ways that devotees probably feel connected to Swami the most and it can be broken down into 3 categories, and these will also be the next 3 sections that we'll be focusing on: darshan, sparshan, and sambhashan. That is to see, touch, and speak. What, as a photographer, as a graphic designer, as someone who wants to post something on social media, especially when it's visually driven, your message needs to be something that captures people's eye. It needs to capture their attention. So what do you focus on? You focus on the most important thing. If it's a story about penguins, since we were just talking about Antarctica, and you have an image of a lion, it's not going to tell the story. People who are penguin lovers who might be most interested in hearing what you have to say, reading what you have to say, won't necessarily see that. So focus on what's important, and if it's about pollution, or for example, Go Green, since we're having that conference coming up next month, you'll want to make sure that it focuses on something that is relevant to what you're going to talk about. We're going to share a few posts, a few pictures. Some of these were submitted and weren't, if they're being shown right now, they probably weren't used. This is an image that was submitted to the Sky Universe. And as you can see here, the image is not necessarily the best quality. I'm going to highlight a few points here. And I would love if you can respond in the chat group with your thoughts on each of these images as they come up on screen. We were just talking about this image, so check out this mic. It's pretty blurry. And how about this harmonium? My God, I can't draw straight, but it seems like my lines are more sharper than the lines on that harmonium. And these lights, so what does this photo tell you? It's a slightly blurred photo. There's a lot of camera shake. And that's what happens when things that are stationary look very blurred like this, out of focus. So we do know that this is a bhajan event or a devotional event. There is music that's happening, but the image is not focused. There's poor lighting and there is a lot of camera shake. We're going to discuss how to identify when a photo can be improved on, and then we're going to talk to you about how to improve these photos, how you can take better photos. If you're interested in photography, we can talk to you about what you should do. If you're interested in graphic design, we can talk to you about the steps that you can take to put out some great graphics. Yeah, how about this photo? This is another one that was submitted to SSIO Universe. This lamppost over here isn't very clear. These look like some wonderful posters, but it's a little hard to make out what those posters say. I can see respecto here, amor, paz, but the drawings themselves are not that clear. It's very pixelated. And yes, Prajin, that's too much light there. It's overexposed. So, exactly, Soshan. It is very, very bright. Sorry. Thank you, everyone who's responded to the polls. If you haven't gotten a chance to, that's okay. You are more than welcome to respond to them in the chat group as well. So some of the points that were mentioned here was it was overexposed. We couldn't make out the artwork. It was a group photo, which is great. And it's pixelated when it's blown up into a larger size. When it's smaller over here, it looks okay. If you're taking a photo with a phone and your phone is a little older, chances are it's not going to be the clearest of photos. But there are a few things that you can do to enhance the image itself while you're taking the image, not after. Post-processing is a different workshop that we won't get into today. How about this image? It is dark cyan, yes. It's a very dark image. I'm not even sure what the activity is. In the previous image, we could tell that there was a group here and they had drawn some amazing artwork. In this image, in the first image, we were able to tell that it was some music that was happening. But in this, in this image, it's very dark. Yes, it is zoomed in. Very poor lighting. We're not sure what the activity is. You see food? Everyone keeps saying food. I want to see the food. But it was probably me if I was eating food. I'm always eating food. This could have been an Earth Hour event. It could have been a devotional event. We're not sure. It's very dark. We can't tell what the activity is. So whenever you take a photo, always ask yourself, is it clear? Does it answer the question? Does it draw the viewer in? Is it interesting enough for people to want to read on a bit more? SSIO Universe, SSIO Young Adults, any reporting organization will always want to start off with some good photos and have photos throughout the article that are very descriptive. And if an image like this is submitted, we can't use it. How about this one? Here's an image that was taken at a recent retreat that we had in our region in Southern California. And This is Dr. Sundar Iyer in the front. No, sorry, my annotation is going. There we go. There he is. He's blurry. Can't really make him out. We can't make out the audience members that much either. And that's on purpose. That is by design. It was meant to be a creative photo. It is an aperture shot. And the focus was meant to be on this, on the lamp. It's a creative image. It wasn't meant to tell a story, and it cannot be used in an article. It was just something taken for fun. And that's absolutely okay. We're not saying you should only take the perfect image and nothing else. So this is called depth of field, where something within a certain range is in focus and something out of that range is not going to be in focus. We're going to show you some more examples of images that have been taken. And off to you, Sheena.
Thank you, Bala. So after going through all of those examples, what does a good photo look like? We're going to show you some examples now. And again, would like you to note down what makes those photos good in the comment section. So what does this photo tell you? What kind of activity are they taking part in? Yeah. Thanks everyone so everyone can clearly tell it's a gardening service. Some sort of farming. Yeah. Right, and the photo is focused and steady. Should we move on to the next one? So what about this one? This photo was taken here in Hong Kong on Swami's, I want to say, 91st birthday. Can you tell? Yeah. Imagine. So there's clearly an event happening. You don't usually have that many flowers. Yep, shows the crowd, the decorations, the altar. Yeah, definitely. Shiny. Yes, it is quite shiny. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this is Dr. Sundar Iyer giving a talk in America recently. I think our very own Bala took this photo. What does this show you? It's a very interactive photo. You know, he's not standing still. His arms are not by his side. His hand is moving. Shows he's interacting and talking to his audience. Video camera seems a bit disturbing. I think Bala was going for a creative shot at that point, right, Bala? Determined speaker, yes, that's right. Telling a
Yeah,
story.
that's right. That's right. So again, there's another example of depth of field where something outside that range is not going to be in focus. It gives you a sense of what to focus on in the image, in the photo that's being taken.
Okay, let's move into the next one. Again, another service project. What makes this photo? Look at the smile from the girl in the white. It's awesome. Food save us smile. Yep. Alrighty, and the final one, which is one of my favorites. Look at that. This is again taken from SSIO Universe. Look at the smile from the patient and the doctor, so beautifully captured. So to summarize all of the above, first I'd like to thank everyone who mentioned some ideas in the comment section. Let's go through the elements of what makes a good photo. A good photo shows when the activity is obvious. We're able to tell if it's a button, a service, what the service is, or if it's a talk in a very engaging way. The photos are all natural. They aren't posed, and it's very important that we focus on the element of a photo not being posed, so not gathering a group to smile and take a picture together, or there's a service here, for example, in Hong Kong, where a lot of the people we visit like to take photos with us because they find it really amusing to look at the photo after. And one thing with that is we can't submit those photos for reports because they're posed shots. So always try and keep stuff natural. We don't want to seem like, we're trying to market or promote the organization through graphics and photos. The lighting is good in all the photos. You're able to see all the elements of the picture. And so is the image quality. They aren't too small and pixelated, but instead are of good viewing quality. And finally, and most of all the pictures that were shown above were all interesting because they're action shots. You're able to connect to the picture and feel your own presence at the event when looking at the photos, and that's what we strive to achieve.
Now we're going to talk about some different perspectives from one scene. The scene was the G7 summit in Canada, and some of you might have already seen these photos, but we're going to go through them again to discuss. So the first image was taken and shared on the German feed. Here we've got the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, standing over, and it looks like there's a bit of a standoff. The photo went viral, people were talking about it a lot, and it seemed like the American president was being almost childish in this case. Now we're going to talk about the US rebuttal to that. And this photo was taken by Dan Scabio. He is the social media director for the White House. And for good reason, because he showed this photo on his Twitter feed within some hours, very quickly. And it shows, yes, Darshan, the first image showed there was tension. This image looks more jovial. People are smiling. The angle's different, gives you a different perspective. Also, you'll want to note that the individual that the social media feed is intended to promote is always going to be in the shot. You can see the Canadian Prime Minister here, the Italian Prime Minister here, and they are part of the shot, but it's important that the photographer takes photos of the individual that they're meant to represent. Here's an image from the Japanese Prime Minister's office, Shinzo Abe. He's in the photo. It didn't matter that Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, wasn't in the photo, and it was nice that they were able to include Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, and our US President in the photo as well, but the focus was showing an image of Shinzo. Now we're going to go to France, and you can see President Macron. Here he is. He's reading through a document, he's looking at it, talking. Here's the Canadian Prime Minister. And I point out the Canadian Prime Minister this time because the next photo from Italy, from Prime Minister Giuseppe's Conte's office, shows an image of the Prime Minister. It was taken at an unfortunate angle because the photographer had to be outside, but they made sure to take an image that included the subject of their feed. In this case, it was Prime Minister Conte's. But you'll note that the host Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is not in this photo, just purely because of the angle. So those are 5 different scenes telling you a little different stories because of the angle and because, as Prajin mentions, the moment when the picture is taken matters. The first image, people were a little more serious. The second image from America showed people being a bit more jovial, and that matters when you're telling a story. So take multiple photos. We're going to go through how to take good photos and video with your phone, because that's probably the first thing that you're going to pull out of your pocket, unless you're an avid photographer with a DSLR camera or mirrorless camera or SLR camera. Chances are you're not going to be lugging that around with you everywhere you go. So we're going to discuss how to take good photos with your phone, and if you should take portrait versus landscape photos. So if you're intending to take photos that should be shared on a social feed, it won't matter too much. If you're sharing it through WhatsApp, and chances are the image is going to be full screen, instead of having that background in black, if you're taking a landscape photo, you can take a vertical photo so that it fills the screen completely. Likewise, if the image is going to be shared on a TV screen or a monitor, you're going to want to take that photo in landscape mode, and that's going to be where the length of it is horizontal. So you want to first keep your shot steady. We saw that image that was submitted to the SSIO Universe from the Zonal Young Adult Conference in Zone 1, where the image was very shaky, it was blurry. We want to make sure that your photo is steady. So you steady your device, you steady yourself. If your hands are shaking, the camera is going to shake. The phone is definitely going to shake. It's a much lighter device. Here's an image that I took at Lake Washington, at the harbor. So for this, I wanted to have a good angle, so I laid down on my stomach and lowered the phone to just above the waterline so I could take this photo. Because my hands are outstretched, I didn't have to worry about camera shake, and I got a pretty decent photo at sunset. Of course, this photo is much larger than it was intended to be, so you will see that there is some graininess, some noise in the photo. You want to make sure that your lenses are always clean. Use a microfiber cloth, wipe the dust off if there are any. If it's a little filmy, use an eraser or rubber to take that film off. Prepare for your photo. If you know that you're going to be taking an image of someone somewhere at a particular position, if you know that ahead of time, get to that place before if you can. In the photos that were shared before about the different perspectives at the G7 summit, the photo that was taken inside looked a little better than the photos that were taken outside through the window. So if you have no choice and you must take it through the window, please go ahead and keep your camera lens or phone lens flush as possible against the window so that you don't have the reflections. This image was taken at a Global Akhanda Bhajans probably 2 years back, and I noticed the uncle who, I knew where the RP plate was already placed, and I knew that uncle who was going to be taking RP and lighting it up as well. So I went ahead, dashed over there a little ahead of him, positioned myself, and started taking photo bursts. So here's where it's important to take multiple photos. And I just happened to catch the camphor being lit by the fire starter in one of those bursts. So that was a lucky take. And finally, as we were being introduced, it was mentioned that I am a dog parent, and this is my puppy, Nandi. She is very much she very much thinks that she's a puppy, even though she's 5 years old, and she doesn't like water too much. But I just happened to catch her at sunset running towards me while I was a little further in the ocean, and the sun was setting, so you can see the lighting here, and it just was a wonderful moment to snap a photo with my phone, not with a camera, just with a phone. And because there were some buildings in the background, I knew that I needed to lower myself just so I could get them out of the skyline, and it looks like a relatively clean skyline except for the trees that you can see in the background. But in reality, there are buildings right over that little hill. So that's about how to take good photos and videos with a phone. With a camera, it's not so different. You always want to prepare for your shots. Bring your gear, it helps. And if you're taking photos or videos of children or pets, bring bribes. It helps to make sure that their attention is focused on something, whether it is the camera or off to the side. But if they're engaged, it makes for a much more enticing photo. If you know that you're going to be taking a wide-angle photo and you don't have much space to back up, bring a wide-angle lens. If you know you're going to be taking a lot of portrait photos, bring a portrait lens. If you know you're going to be taking photos from far away, then bring a telescopic lens. Know what type of shots you'll be needing to take and bring the appropriate lenses, bring the appropriate gear. Speaking of gear, you want to make sure that your shot is steady. So we mentioned this with a phone, and there are tripods and gimbals for phones, but they are a bit pricey. However, when it comes to taking photos with really nice and fancy cameras that you spent a lot on, you probably want to make sure that you spend a little bit on making sure that your shots, the photos, are going to be steady. So get yourself a tripod or a gimbal. In this photo that was shared by National Geographic, the cameraman knew that he wanted to take the photos of these penguins, videos of these penguins, so he made sure that he was going to be at a good angle for this image. If you're going to be taking static photos, a tripod's great, or a monopod. If you're going to be taking videos on the move, it's great to have a gimbal. Always, lighting is so important. We've been talking about it quite a bit so far. If the event allows for it, go ahead and use flash photography or lighting for videography. But be respectful of the place. If it's a temple and they don't allow flash photography, please don't insist on it because you're reporting an event. It's more important to respect the sanctity of the place where you are. And finally, if you're taking audio, make sure that you mic your subject. And if you're taking audio from afar, go ahead and use a boom mic with a dead cat. And a dead cat is not as grotesque as it sounds. It just looks like a furry cover. It is a furry cover that you put on boom mics. So it helps with making sure that you have really good audio quality. Even if you're going to get the audio later, make sure that you capture at least some stock audio, B-rolls or whatever. We're going to move on to permissions. It's pretty important to seek permission, even when it's an informal photo of pets or children. I was at the SeaTac airport in Seattle, Washington, and I noticed one of the passengers had a dog that she was traveling with, and I was so excited to see a dog. I've been missing mine for a while. And I went ahead and asked her for permission, and you can't imagine how grateful she was to be asked first before someone just snapped a photo of her dog. People have feelings, and she needed that dog for emotional support. So she was already pretty shaky getting on the flight. And can you imagine if someone just comes up and takes a photo without asking you for permission? It's great to speak to someone. It's great to speak to whomever you're going to be taking a photo of and whoever their guardian might be. So it is courteous. Always ask. Credit, credit, credit. You have to credit your sources if you take a photo from someone else. If you're sourcing audio, if you are sourcing a photo, if you're resharing a post, always credit someone, whoever who initiated the first post. If you're resharing from a person who reshared from someone else, mention the entire chain. It's respectful. Speaking of respect, media release. This applies to music, photo, videos. If you are going to be at an event, you want to be professional about it and request that the photographer who's going to be taking photos on your behalf, or the videographer taking photos on your behalf, has signed the media release. They are consenting for you to use their images, their video, their work. So that's in the professional sense. And of course, if you are at an event and there are people you're going to be taking photos and videos of, respect their privacy. They have rights. At the medical camps that we do here in our region, we have the people who come in actually let us know if they're okay with being photoed or videoed. And so they get a wristband, a blue band or a red band that that can easily identify if they're okay with being photographed or videoed. So over to you, Sheena. I think Sheena is having a little problem with unmuting, but you always want to understand before you make that adjustment. And Swami has said this. We weren't able to find his specific quote. It's been
I
back.
could hear you guys, but you guys couldn't hear me, and I dropped out. That's weird. Yeah. Sorry. Bala, did you read the quote out?
No, not yet. Go ahead.
All right. So first understanding, then adjustment. So from this, we can tell that it's very important that you know your audience, know where the graphic is going to be posted, who is it going to attract, what kind of event is it for. So once you understand all of this, you can adjust and ensure that the graphic covers the key components. If you're a designer for your local YA team or national team, always try to seek a brief from your seniors. Don't be ashamed to ask a lot of questions in the beginning, because it saves you time in the long run and minimizes the back and forth and all the change requests. We're now going to look at different kinds of posters that effectively communicate their point. So another question for you guys, what do you guys think about this graphic that was done for the Go Green conference? If you guys don't mind putting it in the chat box. Looks very nice. Yep. It's to the point, you know straight away what the graphic is trying to achieve, what the call to action is, what the event is. It's eye-catching. Yep, that's right. Just moving on to the next slide. So we saw that Go Green conference graphic now. It's so easy to verbalize a lot on a graphic because you may think that it's so necessary or it's your only chance to inform everyone of an event. However, less is more. When graphics are too intense and crowded, people are not inclined to read it. Our aim is to catch their attention, quickly inspire them through colorful and bright visuals. As mentioned earlier, we have a team of brilliant designers, some of whom may be on the call right now. We learned so much from these guys. They're so patient with us, and we all work together to ensure what we deliver for Swami is up to standard and it's perfect just like him. So what's important? What are the ideal elements for a graphic? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Make sure the font sizes on the graphic is readable. Not all of your audience will be young adults, fortunately. Make sure the graphics are bright, eye-catching. So we saw earlier the Go Green Conference sign-up image. Straight away, you're able to tell what the call to action is and what the event is for. No space was wasted on the graphic. There wasn't a description of what the event would be like, what workshops, what guest speakers would be taking place. It was just a pure sign up now, and more information would have probably been provided on a website. So I'm now going to walk you through some other posters that we've posted on the SSIO Young Adult social pages. First one is the LATA offering. Now with this graphic, it was very key that the words we used at the top were to the point and not too wordy, which will ultimately then crowd the graphic. We needed to put the core information in the top and try to keep it to as much to the point as possible. The next one is an example of a quote graphic, one we did for the Sadhana of Love program. If you're going to use a picture of Swami in a graphic, make sure you don't flip the image, because people can usually tell by his mole if he looks a bit wonky and if the image has been moved around or edited or played with. So try not to do that and try to keep him original. Try not to place text on his body or hair. Keep the text around him rather than on him. And this is one good example of that. As you can see as well, we also use a full citation in quote graphics in case anyone wants to read further. So what do you do when you have a lot of information but can't fit them onto one graphic? We made 5. We focused on 5 of the water conservation tips given to us by the Serve the Planet team. And thanks to Instagram's new feature at the time of having multiple shots and panels, we were able to post them as individual panels, and I think Instagram goes up to 10, so we tried it out with 5. Using these features are a great way to split things up while keeping your audience engaged.
I'm going to now talk about some of the words that we've heard so far, some of the phrases, maybe some jargon. The most important thing when you're seeing a visual is, does it tell a story? It's about an image, and sometimes it can be an image about a dog playing with a ball. Sometimes it can be a more moving image, a bit more serious. This was something from UN Environment, and they shared this on World Turtle Day. Obviously, we can see the contaminants that had polluted the water and were washed ashore along with the turtle. You can still see the netting on the turtle's back. So it should move the audience member, it should drive them to something. And usually a photo has a call to action. It drives people to, it drives traffic to a certain website or to read at least the caption beneath. Raise awareness. So how can we do this? One of the things we've talked about before was depth of field. Here's an image of a dog. Her name is Phoebe. If you haven't realized by now, I am very much a dog person. Taken with my phone, this nose, Phoebe's nose, is what's in focus. Her eyes, her ears are a little out of focus. They're not in focus, rather, they're not unfocused. Her teeth are actually not that sharp, so her teeth are fine. They are still in focus. But as you can see, her feet beneath and even the chair to the side in the background are not. And this is done purposefully. And you can do this with your phone. You can simply tap on the face that you want, and you will be able to focus on just that aspect. Phones that have multiple cameras on them are able to do this just as well. Phones that have only a single camera, as long as they're a little bit more newer, are able to do this just fine. Yes, Anastasia, a very cute dog. Here's another photo of Dr. Sundaraya, again from the most recent retreat that we had in our region. The sister over here is out of focus by design, as is the plastic water bottle that we wish we could unsee in light of this Go Green conference. The monks to the side, and the subject of our focus, Dr. Sundaraya, is in focus. The trees in the background are blurred, and it's by design. Lighting is so important, as we've discussed before, and here's an example of poor lighting. This is Nandi and I. Nandi is the one with her tongue out. Everything here is in focus. The lighting, however, shows us in sharp relief. So you can see that most of me is too dark. Nandi is way too dark. And this is because the phone was set to capture light automatically. And it did that and exposed the photo, keeping the bright parts in mind. If you want to tell your phone to focus on a certain area, it'll usually adjust the lighting accordingly. If you need to, you can manually do that, depending on the settings on your camera app. If you are able to, however, and if it's an important photo, then you can always use lighting and reflective shields to help make sure that the lighting is great. Focus. This is a photo from the Canadian Prime Minister's office, but in this instance, it's about where the audience's attention is drawn to, not the actual focus feature on the camera. However, the person in the background, all the way at the tree, by the tree lines, is out of focus, as are the people at the back of this crowd. The people in the foreground are very much in focus, as is the Canadian Prime Minister. But the purpose of this image is to show him speaking with a group of people. So it wouldn't do to have them out of focus or having just a close-up of only the Prime Minister and no one else, because it wouldn't tell the story that this does. Another way to focus your audience's attention is to zoom in. If you have a camera with a telephoto lens, you can zoom in much more than you can if you have a phone. If you try zooming in with a phone, you are going to go from optical zoom to digital zoom, and that's where things get a little noisy and grainy. So in those instances, I would recommend that you move closer. However, this is my wedding. This is my wife's hand and mine, and I probably would not have appreciated if someone came up right in my face and took a photo. So always be aware of the situation. No posing unless you're doing selfies or weefies. Children and pets love the camera sometimes. Sometimes they don't and they're very shy, so you'll always want to bribe them. But they won't pose for you, and it's the rare child that will pose. Some of them are wonderful at posing, some of them are terrible at it. I run away from a camera unless I'm behind it. You don't want to pose, and I believe Ishina brought this up before. It doesn't look natural. It feels like a forced image. Make sure your photos are engaging. This is an image taken from a series by Arjun Kamath on Instagram, and he had a series of photos, photo stories, which would depict an image, just one frame, not a video, but just one frame of a story, and he would have the details of that story in the caption. But his feed is very engaging. I would highly recommend people check it out. Here is an example of proximity gone wrong. Ishina took this photo, but wanted to make sure that she didn't scare the peacock, so she took it from afar with a phone. If she was closer, this photo would have been more focused on the peacock, but right now the viewer's attention is naturally going to be focused on all the foliage around the peacock first. it doesn't draw your attention to the peacock immediately. And one way to also eliminate all the greens is to crop the image. Another way to deal with this is to also color pop by reducing the green color around and just having the peacock be in stark relief. Now we're going to talk about color and saturation. I love Milo. Anyone who knows me knows that I love Milo. It's kind of borderline insane how I love Milo. So I naturally had photos of Milos on my phone, and so I was able to take this photo and drained a little bit of the color from it. So that's called reducing the color saturation. And you can see that it's just drained a little bit. The saturation isn't completely removed. If it was, then it would be black and white because there'd be no color. This is how the photo looks again. And notice on top, there's a sprinkling of Milo. Oh, wow. I have a fellow Milo fan, Cyan. So this Milo on top is great. It's called Milo Dinosaur. And now notice when I increase the color saturation, this Milo on top looks very angry, almost like chili powder. So you always want to make sure that the color saturation is just right. Sometimes the images taken will automatically correct for it. Sometimes you need to adjust it yourself. If you're taking a photo and sharing it on Instagram or any other social feed, chances are you'll be able to adjust it yourself. Otherwise, you might be choosing, to use a filter, but make sure that the images look relatively realistic if that is your intent. If you don't want to, of course, then that's your prerogative. Gestures are so important. They're a way of engaging the audience. And here is a photo of people not being able to gesture because they were so cold. You can't even tell what the activity is. This is actually Naga Sankirtan. And it was just so cold up in the mountains that almost everyone had their hands tucked in or folded, trying to huddle together for warmth. And yeah, it just didn't make for a very engaging photo. So these were some of the photos that I took because I was running around, but the photos that went up eventually were the photos that were engaging, that were having gestures and enticed audience to read up more about what we had to say. We talked about being natural and with your gestures. It's also very important that you're able to just take photos in the moment and not start setting up your camera to take a photo unless you love landscape photography or portrait photography. But right in that moment, if you are just wanting to take a selfie with someone, capture a moment, a sunset, or even like this photo, capture a walk along a bridge up high, close to the treetops, taking natural photos right in that moment, but not worrying too much about all this terminology or ideas that we're throwing at you right now is very, very important. When you're at an event, it is just as important to be a part of that event rather than being right outside it because you're so focused on taking photos and videos. And I'm very guilty of this. I get very into the photography part and almost forget to sometimes listen to what's being spoken. So definitely make sure that you're right there in the moment. Right. So this next images topic that we're going to discuss is HDR, high dynamic range. Some of you might have seen them used already. It's a setting on your phone. And here's an example of HDR that would have been helpful if I had that enabled. So you can see the lighting here was a lot. And Dr. Sundarayar, who should have been the focus of this image, is way too dark. So enabling HDR allows for multiple photos taken at different exposures and then stacked on top of each other so that it makes for a clear photo of everything. Nothing is too dark, nothing is too light. Be patient. You never know when you're going to get an amazing shot. We were in Cambodia and the monks were walking by playing tourists enjoying the temples. And this monk just happened to lean back over around this tree to speak to someone else. And it just was such a beautiful image. I had to take that photo, and I'm sure I haven't done it justice, but it just is a memory of that moment. Do always be patient. The moment you've taken that photo that you need doesn't mean that there won't come another chance to take a photo in candid, as someone had mentioned before. Check your framing. You don't want to decapitate people's heads. I took this photo because I wanted to focus on the boy playing the tambourine payment. But in my haste, I decapitated some people's heads, including my national YA rep, my regional YA rep. And it was not done on purpose, but because I checked my framing, I was able to review the image that I had taken and then take the photo again. Shutter speed is also important. So this is Nandi meeting Cody for the first time. Cody is the golden retriever / lab / Alaskan Husky. Cody was so excited, and his tail was naturally wagging. When that happened, it became a little blurry. Nandi is a bit more sharper because she was a bit more still and sniffing Cody. But this is an instance of shutter speed gone wrong because there's movement, you can see it, but it's not so sharp and it isn't done on purpose. Here's an image of a monk at Angkor Wat where shutter speed is done on purpose. It's intended. The initial image that I had taken was with a faster shutter speed, but this wonderful purple fan that it was using was still. And I want to introduce a little bit of movement, so I slowed down the shutter speed, and we have this purple haze that he's waving around. If you can hear the cop cars in the background, forgive me. My window is slightly open. Background is so important. Always check what's in your background. This again goes back to reviewing your photos after you take them, just like with checking your frames. You don't want to have people who look bored, uninterested, and in this case, they weren't involved in it because they were waiting for someone else to come join them. But this was a YA talk that Dr. Sundaraya gave, and it looks bad for those who aren't aware of the background story to see this image and wonder why are there people uninvolved in this conversation, in this talk. Take options, have photos at different angles, different lightings, have options when you are looking through your photos later. And also take a variety of photos. It's very helpful when you're looking back and you want a different angle or a different activity like Naga Sankirtan or a talk or at the medical camp between the different departments. Be creative, enjoy the creativity, take silly photos, take serious photos, take photos that might not be usable, but just enjoy and explore taking photos. And of course, the last thing is perspective. We spoke about this before, but we are, in this particular sense, I'm also talking about a different angle. So here's an image of Nandi, and I just happened to lay down underneath her while she was looking off in the distance and snap this photo with the sky in the background. So that's summing up this quick word cloud of ideas that we've been discussing so far. We're going to move on now to Ashina.
Thank you, Bala. So we've just gone through the darshan to see section, and we're now going to move on to sparshan, which is to touch. The act of connecting with your audience, touching their hearts and inspiring them. People don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. Do you remember the last time you spoke in a group with friends and talked about Swami? We're able to go on talking for hours, sharing our experiences and how he touched our hearts and how he has always been by our side. When connecting with your audience, it's so important to make it personal. Let them get to know you, especially if you're behind a device and it's a virtual connection. Don't bore them. inspire them. Be captivating and share your experiences and your learnings, because when you speak from the heart, everything comes out naturally. Over to you, Bala.
Yes, so just checking that I was unmuted. Speaking of touch, we're going to use it in a different sense here about how someone feels, the emotions that evokes from seeing an image, from seeing a graphic, a photo, a video, anything. So we're going to look at this image here of Swami back in the day, throwback, with this fantastic classic car. The people, the demographic that this photo is most likely to appeal to is, first of all, going to be Sai devotees, but more tightly, it's going to be those devotees who were probably from our grandparents' or parents' times. And we want to be aware of the photo that we use, not blindly use a photo because it has the subject matter that we're discussing. So for the newer devotees or those probably around our age, a photo like this might be more apt. You can probably remember sitting in darshan, yawning, waiting, and here's Swami doing just that, giving darshan though. How about this image? As you think of, well, as you say the Brahmapanam out loud or inside, using your inside voice, can you just imagine Swami walking down, serving you food? Will probably make you pray a little more fervently. So if this was a workshop on food, this would definitely be the photo I'd start off with. And it's probably the one that appeals to me the most. And I'm guessing science, since he and I are very much foodies. For those of you who've experienced beautiful sunsets, this photo with HDR mode enabled might speak to you a bit more. And how many of you have not wanted to comfort a crying child? This is a stock photo, but seeing this photo immediately wants you to just run over and comfort this child and say it's okay, and almost do anything that they would ask of you. And I think we've shown plenty of photos of dogs so far, so I wanted to share this lovely photo of two sleepy kittens. This is a Sai workshop, so I thought it was best to close this portion of it with a photo of the gates to Patti. I'd driven past this place quite a few times. Sometimes they were dark, sometimes I'd just forgotten about taking the photo until after we passed it. So this time I had to insist that the driver stop a little ahead, and I dashed out, and my wife tells me I scared the driver because one moment he heard the door close, next moment I was way up in front taking this photo. But taking me back to Bharti, right? Over to you, Shrina.
Thanks, Bala. So now moving on to Sambhashan, to speak. We're going to look at speaking verbally and through written content. So whether you're leading a conference call at work or a webinar like this one, or even doing a presentation or emceeing a Sai event, or any event for that matter, it's so important to not waste your words. Keep your audience captivated. It is important to practice Swami's think method, especially for virtual presentations when you don't have the opportunity to directly interact with your audience face-to-face, and also tighten the gap for miscommunication and assumptions. So just to refresh everyone's memory, what does think stand for? Is it true? Will it hurt anyone? Will it improve the silence? Is it necessary? And is it kind and helpful? So again, just like with posters and graphics, it's important to know your audience. Let's take Swami, for example. How does he say things? Swami is able to get through to people of all ages and experiences. in a very short time. Don't waste time when presenting. Especially nowadays, because of social media and with everyone on their phones all the time, people don't have a large attention span. So when they're listening to you, get to the point. So we're now going to look at some presentation techniques, most of which may have been covered by Brother Ben's previous YATD workshop, which can be found on the SSIO YouTube channel. The first point I'd like to say is it is so important to be emotive. So people can sense your tone of voice. Even if you smile, your voice automatically changes. No one can see you, so don't judge yourself. Voice projection is also so important. So make sure you are projecting your voice to your audience in a clear way, and so they understand you. If you're presenting in person or even on a call, standing up helps. And in person, try not to flop on your side or put your hands behind your back. Be confident. Even if you have to fake it, trust me, it'll work. When presenting virtually, sometimes standing even works for me because I'm able to have my voice come across stronger as opposed to when I'm slouched, sitting down in a chair. So even if you are sitting down, you don't want to stand up, sit up straight. It's something that those 3 words are something I always heard during SSC growing up. Sit up straight, Asina, sit up straight. Next point is, if you have a piece of paper, don't cover your face with it. Show your audience your beautiful smiles, unless you're Bala, of course. And remember to breathe and pause. Talk slowly so your audience can understand you and so they can connect with you. When giving a talk or presenting, make sure you have notes. Don't try to wing it. I know someone who did a presentation or did a talk in Cycle 1 Hall a few years ago, and it was a 30-minute talk, but all he took up with him was 4 bullet points on a Post-it note. And his talk came across so inspiring and so captivating because he was inspired, he was connected to what he wanted to say to all of us, and that made it so awesome. Be engaging. Use your hands when you speak. Don't try and stand stiff and hide your hands behind your back. As we saw in those photos of Dr. Sundar Iyer, his hands were moving. He was engaging and interacting with his audience. Another important point is to stick within your time frame. People get bored and hungry in some cases, especially if sections or talks happen to be before lunch breaks or any form of breaks for that example. And now I'm going to also focus on writing. This is applicable to submitting SI reports, social media captions, as well as for drafting emails or for personal content. I used to work for a public relations agency here in Hong Kong where we were drafting press releases for a different number of clients. So I used to work on 13 clients at the same time. And so each client has their own brand and they have their own tone of voice. So we needed to adapt to that. And I got very lucky because the year I started the internship at the PR agency, before they gave me a full-time job, Swami brought me in to do his media work. And working in the SI fold and with other brothers and sisters really helped me professionally and develop my skills in the workplace. So the first point I'd like to say is to be concise. When writing content, be brief yet comprehensive. It always helps to write up a plan or a structure so you know exactly what is necessary to include. You may think, oh, I don't have enough time and I need to start this right away. But actually sitting down and gathering your thoughts really saves you time in the long run. The next point is to not waste words waffling. Highlight the key components of what you're trying to say. When responding to emails, try to express gratitude to the sender for their time in emailing you, or start the email on a positive note. You could even say, it's great to hear from you, or it's lovely to be in touch. When it comes to emails or communicating through WhatsApp or social networking sites, keep messages short and to the point. Listing a few bullet points will make it easier for others to read. Thoughtful and well-written emails take some time to compose. This time is well invested. You want to make sure that all the information you have is gathered so people don't waste their time reading and trying to diffuse a confusing email. If you're sharing details about an event, it is best to list the name of the event, the date, the location, time, and all other necessary information, including links to register or directions. Include all the information. Don't try and say stuff like, oh, for directions or registering, please look at an email I sent you 2 weeks ago. We should try our utmost best to make it easy for those reading our messages so they get all the information they need and to provide clarity. Try not to also use capital letters because whether it's on emails or through WhatsApp, we tend to use that when we're angry at someone, but it also gives the impression that we're shouting at them. And so moving on to the next point, 200 to 300 words for a SSIO report. So we recently worked on content for the annual report on the young adult side, and 200 to 300 words was hard for some zones to capture and write what they had done over the year. But when you keep it, again, concise and not waste words, you're giving your audience, like, you're not giving them too much information that's going to bore them and make them not want to read on what's happening. Also for SSIO reports, we tend to use British English, so please check this when you submit stuff because it can get to sometimes it can get quite time consuming. You can change the language on your computer to English UK to save your time as well. And don't forget to proofread and spell check. For example, many people often spell Prashanti wrong. There's no H after the S. And so when you're unsure of these things, of the spelling, ask someone, Google it, or even check previous documents. Try not to use abbreviations in official documents as it looks unprofessional, and ensure that you use a spell check before you submit stuff. We have a whole writing style sheet of guidelines on how to write a good SSIO report. So if you would like more information on this, please do reach out to either the YATD team who can direct you to us, or you can email us directly at yamedia@satyasai.org. We're now going to look at social posts. We're going to show you some examples of social media captions that provide the right amount of information to their audiences. What we try to do is provide a summary of what we are posting in 1 or 2 sentences and link people to a website if possible for more information if they want to read on. When in doubt, you can always go through SSIO Universe's Facebook page and look at how they cover service activities or any activities done globally by the SSIO organization. Check how reports are formatted because this usually means if they're on the SSIO Universe website, they've already been approved. And so when you want to submit stuff, the approval process will be faster. Always try and prepare your captions beforehand for social media. There's been so many times where like Bala or myself have been out and we're not at a laptop and we have to post on SSIO Young Adults. And so we try and have our captions ready so we're not wasting time and we make sure that everything is correct and we're not posting the wrong caption for the wrong graphic. So just always double check. We need to be careful when using forms of media today, especially for a SSIO account, because we need to remember whose name we are working under. So hashtags are key for an open public account. Researching hashtags by going through how many posts have used that hashtag will help you find out how popular it is. On Instagram, you can do a search of the hashtag you want to use and check how many people have already used that hashtag and how popular it is. If you don't know how to do this, feel free to contact Bala or myself or the media team through the SSIO Young Adults Facebook page or Instagram page by personally messaging us. So to wrap up this section, let's just go look at some examples. Yeah. So this is from a recent bulletin that was written on a recent event that happened in New Zealand, which I had a good opportunity of attending. So this covered, as you can see here, 200 young adults from Zone 3 attended the event, and they gathered on and it basically highlights what was done during the event. And underneath that post, there was a whole bulletin for people to want to read on. Next one is one of our usual graphics. I think it was from a previous YATD workshop. Kept it quite short and concise. It's spread out so it's easy to read. It wasn't so that it was one big chunk of paragraph and hard for everyone to read. It's quite short, concise, provides 2 links to register and 1 to the YATD website for more information. And so, ultimately, we need to mimic Swami's communication skills. Learn from his qualities and examples, how he interacts with his devotees, whether it's a pat on the cheek or on the back, or a smile or a nod of his head.
Ultimate goal as his devotees, as spiritual aspirants, is mergence. So we end up being God. We can take professional pride in our work, and we can also hold ourselves up to a higher standard. You want to see others as God and serve others by doing your best. See yourself as God, do the best for yourself, and if you ever have any doubts about how to do something, ask yourself, what would I do? What would Sai do, my inner Sai? And of course, you can always ask us, reach out to us at ymedia@satyasai.org, and we'll be more than happy to help you out as well. Last thoughts that we want to leave you with is to make sure that you also would always respect others' intellectual property rights. Always ask, don't just take. And in summary?
So to summarize, when it comes to photos and videos, always remember that it's so important to tell a story. If this means you have to stand in front to take photos for a long time to make sure you get the right shot, that's fine. I think a lot of people in Hong Kong think I'm a bit of a monkey because I jump to the front a lot. I like to take photos of the cars. Oh, thank you, Bala, I learned from you. We don't have many opportunities because people move about a lot. So don't waste your opportunities. Try your best to do it. I was at a sadhana camp here a few years ago, and I was in the front for like about 5 minutes taking photos. And I think because the speaker was moving his hands a lot, I wasn't able to keep up with it. And I had an auntie come up to me going, just take 1 or 2 photos and go and sit down. And I'm like, yeah, I really can't because none of this is going to get approved for reporting. So do what you need to do. Do your duty within limits. Keep focused. Don't try and deviate, and just, again, within reason. A girl wouldn't move to the boy side, or a boy wouldn't move to the girl side. Within reason, do what you need to do. Keep focused on what your task is. And always ensure that the lighting is good when it comes to photos and videos. You don't want to find later that you've wasted time taking photos and then go back and find that, oh, I haven't checked it, and oh my God, all the photos are really dark because my camera setting was wrong. Also, when it comes to photos and videos, as Bala mentioned, make sure they're filmed or captured in landscape so it can be projected in full screen. For when it comes to posters and graphics, get to the point. Know who your target audience is and cover the key components of who, what, when, where, why, how. But most of all, it is so important to just have fun. Enjoy what you're doing. Oh, and see what Bala is doing. Bala is having fun right now with the slides. Have a good time. And within reason, again, always be mindful, especially if you're coming live. And so is Nandi. Nandi wanted to join the party. If it's a Sai account, remember always, like, you can't have too much fun. I'm sorry to say. You know, it's so easy to Insta story everything and get excited and, oh, I want to shoot that. But no, I think when it comes to Swami's name, we need to be very protective and very cautious. So have fun, but again, within reason. Well, most of all, thank you guys for listening to us and hearing us yap. I know it must be very late for some of you, or the middle of the day for some of you, or even eating into your lunchtime, so pun intended. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. We won't have time for question and answer at the moment. We've unfortunately exceeded our time frame. I would like to acknowledge what Thurshapalli mentioned regarding photography and manipulating photos, either using apps like Photoshop or Affinity to modify the photo. Nandi's making her thoughts known as well on this subject. Make sure that the images are as realistic unless you need to modify it a little bit. Thank you again for your time and thank you for attending. Sairam, and we'll leave it to hand it over back to, I think, Donovan, or was it Kasher?
Sairam.
Thank you so much, Sister Sheena and Brother Bala, for sharing with us on how we best can use photography, videography, and posters to motivate and inspire others. I'm sure all of us have learned something from this session. And let us close today's session with prayer. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jai Sairam, everyone.